You're on the Six Screens Telenetwork, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited, in exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society. And now, the end is near.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome in to our programs tonight. These are live programs in real time, and we have a number of them. They'll be running all night long until the wee hours of the morning. So by all means, stay with the Six Screens Telenetwork tonight. Well, we got a program returning to light, and we have Roland Smith coming in from the United Kingdom, and we have Chad, an activist, speaking up against the Watchtower organization from Illinois. So let's bring them on camera right now and chat with them a bit, and we'll get their program started. Hello, Chad. Hello, Roland.
Hello. Hi. How's everybody in the
greetings?
In the USA?
Well, we're all doing good here in the USA. No strange Chinese balloons this week. So that's we're feeling pretty safe, anyways. So that didn't happen. So we're just getting over that. So other than that, though, we're moving in the right direction. I'm not sure we're going uphill or downhill at this point, but I guess only time will tell. Our inflation is still high. How about inflation in the UK, Roland?
Oh, yeah, still very high, and gas and electric prices through the roof, and so is the price of food shopping. And, you know, we're paying thousands of pounds more this year than we did last year, you know. So, yeah, pretty bad.
People must really be feeling the adverse effects. I know... well, they've got it down to about 6% inflation here, but I think you guys are still running about 10.
Yeah, roughly round about there. Yeah.
Well, I hope
it's quite high.
Well, I hope it all gets better for you. So I'm going to cut you guys loose. Anything in particular you got on the agenda tonight you want to tell the audience?
Well, yeah, we're going to be talking about coercion within the organisation and how they use coercion at every step, right from coming to your doorstep, right to getting baptized, and then throughout after that, right up until either you leave the organisation, and even after that, they're still trying to use coercion. And, you know, really, death is the only escape from that. So we're going to be talking a bit about that, and basically the whole brainwashing that goes on throughout the time that you're in, and possibly the way to break away from that as well towards the end.
Well, very good. Well, we're looking forward to it. So I'm going to step out of the scene here and let you guys do your program. I'm here if you need me. Just let me know.
Well,
okay. Thanks, Rick.
Roland, how you doing, brother?
Oh, I'm doing all right, brother. How are you?
Oh, I'm just fine and dandy like cotton candy.
Oh, very good. Very good. Yeah. Well, this week we've had a few different. I've been looking online and on some of the XJW sites that we're both on, and we see all sorts of things on there. And I noticed one lady had put on that her husband wasn't very understanding of her situation coming out of the Watchtower. He wants her to move on and forget all about it, and she was sort of saying, how do I explain to him, you know, how much control this, organization has on your life, how much trauma it leaves in your life, and, and how much the brainwashing really sinks deep into your psyche, and it takes a lot of getting rid of, it takes a lot of altering. Even now, I still find myself sometimes coming out with thoughts and ideas that were possibly more JW related than anything else, and I've had to correct myself. because I've just realised suddenly that I've got back into a JW way of looking at things, So,
Yeah.
so anyway, what was you going to say, Chad? Have you got?
Yeah, it's interesting that we kind of converged on this because I've been doing some studies. I've been asked to step up in some ministry positions lately, and it's going to take a lot more time. And I was able to talk with Rick, and thank goodness he's a great guy, very understanding, and we put our heads together. And with everything I've got going on my plate, we're going to be putting my bi-weekly Sunday show, Cult Busters. We're going to put that on the back burner for a while. We're going to cancel it, and because I have got so much stuff going on. In fact, with some of the stuff I was preparing for an upcoming worldview class I'm going to be teaching, it's real interesting that our topic is coercion and brainwashing and how that works. Because one of the things I had to, when I was looking into my worldview class, I actually looked into one of the more popular cults around today, which is the woke cult. And it's real interesting. When I was doing my research, I came across a book written in the 1990s called After the Ball. And it was all about how the author was hoping, the two authors were hoping to get the homosexual agenda pushed through in America. And it was real interesting. It was written by Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen. And they were talking about brainwashing or actually they were talking about how to get their agenda pushed through. And they came up with the idea that first you have to desensitize a people, then you have to jam their thought patterns and then convert them over to your way of thinking. And in the book, they observed those are the three same things you want to do to initiate brainwashing. And when you've done those three things, it results in three things, and that is dependency, dissonance, and attitude change. And I was thinking about this whole idea of coercion. It all starts with coercion. It all starts with a confrontation to get a person introduced to your side of any particular issue. And then your job is to get them desensitized to it, confused about it, and then to just get them accepting it. And that's what coercion essentially does.
It's absolutely,
in the Watchtower.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you take the actual definition of coercion, it says the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, and you think to yourself, well, people are thinking out there, well, hang on a minute, Roll, especially if you're a fairly new JW or something, listening in. You think, well, hang on a minute, they haven't threatened me, they haven't, twisted my arm or used any kind of, hard persuasion. But if you look at it from every step of the way, you'll see exactly how they do that. And, so I'm going to start off with the doorstep. They go out on the doorstep, they knock on the doors, somebody comes to the door, and the first thing they do, they'll bring a magazine out, and on the front of it, it's got a paradise or something like that, a paradise earth. And, they'll make some comment, wouldn't you love that to be for your family? How would you feel about your family living in that paradise conditions, and of course, people are looking at the world, particularly today, with the war in Russia and and Ukraine, and then you've got all sorts of nonsense going off with Iran and China, and everybody's on edge, and everybody's on tenterhooks. Everybody's thinking the worst all over, the social media, particularly TikToks and things like that. You've got, it's all doom and gloom. So of course, people are responsive. And so, it's like, well, then they get in there, they start talking, and, they get the Bible study going. And then they talk more about how they're such a wonderful organization, how, you know, it's almost paradise before you've even got to the actual paradise of God. You've got a religious paradise almost going on behind the Kingdom Hall.
Yeah.
These people then are sucked in by this, you know, and they're thinking, oh, you know, this sounds such a lovely way. You know, these people are wonderful, and they're all smiles, and they're all, you know, do anything for you almost attitude. And then it's, you know, and then after a while of studying, you then, you know, they ask you to go to the meetings, and they want you to go to the Kingdom Hall, and they want you to meet the people. And it's not that they're twisting your arm, like physically threatening you or whatever if you don't come, whatever, but you know, they'll mention things like, well, you know, you've got to become a Jehovah's Witness, you've got to become part of the organization to be saved. You've got to, God is in the organization. He's not, you know, he's not out there in the street or in the town or in wherever it is in your house. You know, he's in the organization. So the only way you can acquire God and get to God is go by becoming a Jehovah's Witness, you know, by visiting the Kingdom Hall and getting to know them. Also, by getting to know them, they'll say, well, you'll see that we don't have things like other churches, crosses and stuff like that, because that's all symbolism and idolatry, you know. We keep the congregation clean,
Right.
of all that sort of thing. And a lot of people, that's appealing for them as well, because a lot of people, they don't want to go into a church where people are bowing before crosses. They don't want to bow. And a lot of people get the Catholic idea where people are worshipping Mother Mary or whatever. And so, again, it sounds appealing. It sounds a bit different. It sounds like this could be the true religion, because, you know, it does say in the Bible, after all, don't worship graven images, etc. So
Right.
people, a lot of people know that scripture, they know that commandment. So they think, well, yeah, these people are doing the job. So you then start to go to the meetings. But you can't just go to a meeting. You can't just turn up in your jeans and t-shirt. So then you're coerced and your arms twisted to wear a suit or a dress or a long skirt and something that's appropriate for a meeting, you know. And it's you know, you can't just be yourself. You know, you go there and you sat there and you know, you're meeting everybody. They're all coming up to you. Well, usually, if you knew, you know, they'll come up to you and make a fuss of you as if that's what they do every week to everybody else. They don't,
Right.
but that's the impression they give, and it's all that is influencing your mind. It's all part of the brainwashing, you know. It's all how it's supposed to go down. Everybody's told how to do this, you know. We'll have meetings, you know. Do you go up and introduce yourself to new people, that type of thing, and we'll have talks on that, and making sure that people are, you know, welcome to the congregation when they're new. And so there's your first steps. I mean, I don't know if you want to say anything there before I carry on.
I do, actually, because what you just did, you actually brought up 3 different points, and they cover up the 2 of the first phases of brainwashing. Remember, the first phase is the desensitization, and that's where they come to your door initially, and they introduce themselves, and they start introducing their ideas to you and their worldview, and you point that out, and then you point out how then they want you to start coming to the Kingdom Hall. When they do that, that is where they begin to jam you. They begin to cause dissonance, where your mind is now being confronted with their perspective of things, and you're being pushed into their kind of way of thinking. And then finally they begin, and I call that part 1 of the jamming. Part 2 of the jamming, like you said, is they want you to start dressing more like them, acting more like them, doing the things they do. And then finally, we get to the conversion part, which for them is where you actually start going out door to door as an unbaptized publisher. And then finally, you have your full conversion when you're baptized.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have a bit of a story about this because my daughter, my youngest daughter, when she was, in the congregation and she was doing ministry and stuff, she bumped into this lady. She used to work at a doctor's just down the road from here. She was a receptionist before she went to uni to study law. And she bumped into this lady. It was one of the patients that went to the GP surgery, and she got talking to her in the bus stop on her way home one night. And they was talking about religion. Anyway, she invited the lady along to the Kingdom Hall, and surprisingly enough, the lady went. She'd never had a Bible study with them. She'd never really had much to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. She'd been to a normal church before, but not far from where she lived, but she hadn't been to a Kingdom Hall. Anyway, I picked her up, and Kirsty was with me, and we picked her up and we took her to the Kingdom Hall, and she come in. And anyway, one of the elders was giving a talk, and this lady shouted out loud, "No, that isn't right." And he looked up in absolute shock and disgust, and gave me a glare, like, because she was sat next to me and my daughter. Anyway, after the meeting, he come up to me and he said, he said to the lady, he was polite. He said, "Look, I'll talk about this later." He said, he says, anyway, he came up to me and he says, "What's the story with this lady then?" And I said, "Well, Kirsty met her, and she invited her along to the meeting, and she came." I said, "Surprisingly, she actually turned up. She wanted to come." And I said, "We went and picked her up and brought her." And he said, "Well, Kirsty should have had a Bible study with her first, and to get her, and to give her the rules and stuff of the congregation before she came, and to get her used to what we do and how we go about sort of answering in meetings and stuff, and when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate, And he was quite annoyed, that Kirsty hadn't studied with her first, in order that she was prepared and and already brainwashed to a certain extent for when she came, so right. She knew not to question him, not to question his, what he was saying from the platform. She had to believe that was true before she even came, and so there was straight away, we can see how they like to get people prepared, for what they're going to do to them when they turn up.
Yep. And and to go back with those whole phases that I brought up, the woman that Kirsty brought, she had skipped phase 1, part 1 and 2 altogether. And now all of a sudden she was brought in at phase 2, part 1. So it really goes to show you the necessity of following these steps of brainwashing before you can even begin coercing a person into your group.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course the next step after that, once you get them to the meetings and you've got them dressed nicely and you've got them to shut up in the meetings and not ask awkward questions, certainly not until the end when nobody's about. It was, after that, they then want you to start having a share in the ministry. You start going, actually, first of all, they want you to have a share in answering up. But again, we're there to show them how to do it. And usually what that sort of requires is that, similar to the book study that we're doing with them, we're having a Bible study, book study, whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't call it a Bible study, more of a book study with a few choice scriptures thrown in to match their, doctrine. And they'll then sort of get you to highlight certain parts of a paragraph, and underneath, of course, will be the questions. the questions will be based on the Watchtower. They'll not be based on the Bible. It'll be based on the Watchtower, you know, and it'll be based on what they believe. So your answer is in the paragraph. You know, they've told you what they believe. They'll ask you a question that relates to the paragraph, and the answer will be in the paragraph. So you highlight the paragraph. And then if you're, you know, if you're doing the book study or whatever in their house, then obviously they're supposed to answer that. That gets them ready for the meetings as well. Because once they get to the meetings, they're doing exactly the same thing with the Watchtower studies and the Thursday night ministry school schedule and stuff like that. You know, there's questions and answers during that as well. And so they're getting you ready to answer just how they want you to answer. But they also encourage you to do it in your own words. So you've got to keep it in exact line with what they've said. You've got to say what they've said, only you've got to put it in your own sentence, basically. But you mustn't deviate away from what they've said, you know. So that's the next thing. So then you get them sort of doing it in their own words, which is exactly what they do to every JW. And so therefore you answer up, oh, well, this is the answer to that. And they'll say, oh, yeah, you know, good answer or whatever. You know, but all you've done really is said what they've said in the paragraph. But because you think that you've said it and it's your answer and it's come from your own mouth, well, therefore that sort of reiterates and confirms in your own mind that it must be true because you've just said that. You know, it's very clever, really, the way they manipulate you, to manipulate the mind, to trick it into thinking that their answer really is your answer, and that's how you think. But no, it's not really. It's how they think, and they just tell you how to think.
Yep.
I mean, you know, and then so you get to that point and they start answering up, and they get a big applause and stuff like that, perhaps sometimes from the congregation, or people will, certainly come up to them after them and congratulate them on on their answer, because I mean it's a big thing to answer up, especially your first time in the Kingdom Hall, in front of maybe a lot of people, but you answer up. It could be the simplest of answers. You could have answered it identical to what it said in the paragraph. That's fine, but the fact that you've answered, then you've got these elders and you've got other people coming up, oh, good answer, etc. So that, of course, that gives you confidence, that G's you up, and you think, oh, yeah, I got it right. I'm in line with these people. So, you feel more at one with them then, And so again, they're just starting to, get you more and more hooked. You're becoming more and more like them, and you're feeling all right about it at the time. You feel like you're becoming part of something bigger than yourself, and people like that. People like to become something bigger than themselves. A lot of people do, anyway. And then of course it goes on to the ministry. Then once you've been doing the meeting a few weeks, you've done all of that required, you're dressing nicely, you're answering up nicely in the Kingdom Hall, you're mixing with people to a certain extent, you perhaps going around you perhaps may or may not have been invited round to the houses for a meal. It depends where you are, what congregation you're in, but you're certainly mixing with them, and and then they want you to go out on the ministry. So then you have to you then have to study a book, and you have to sort of answer questions before you can go out on the ministry, because they want to check that you're going to say the right things even when you're out on the ministry. So then they'll get you practicing. Now, I've got a friend, and we have a bit of a laugh about this. She's got a JW next door neighbour, and she was studying with this neighbour for a while, and this neighbour wanted her to go out on the ministry. And so what they did was she had her going out. She wanted to go outside her own this JW's house, knock on a door, and practice the delivery of a Watchtower. And what she could say about the Watchtower. and different, different approaches and different presentations at the door, and maybe a short scripture that will go along with that Watchtower or whatever it is, leaflet, whatever it is that you're placing it on the day, and I mean, my friend just, she said it was too much for her. She suffers from anxiety, she suffers from bipolar like myself. This is how I know her so well, and she said it was just too much for her, and she just, it was a lot of pressure, on somebody that really wasn't, okay with going to somebody's door. She struggles anyway being around people, especially when her anxiety's at full, steam. And I know, because I've had it myself, I suffer from anxiety and bipolar. I know what it's like when you're in that state. And she's, she's a nervous sort of lady, but she's friendly enough, but the thought of going to somebody's door and trying to deliver a Watchtower or a leaflet, it was just too much for her. And yet this woman, she tried to explain this to her neighbour, but this woman was insistent this is what she did, because that's what the organisation does. It insists that you put your students, your Bible students, as they call them, your calls, your whatever, through the paces before they dare to go out on the ministry, and then they'll go out as an unbaptized publisher. But even then, they have to go before elders and be okay to go out on the ministry, right, and then be made up to unbaptized publishers, so that's the steps you go to. And they're saying, well, you can't serve God unless you do the ministry. Salvation with them people is very much by works and works alone. There is no room for God's grace. There's no room for Jesus's ransom sacrifice. It's all about what you do for the congregation and what you do in the ministry, particularly. And so, but for some people, it's just too much. And for some people, they wouldn't be a Jehovah's Witness simply because it's too much for them to go to the doors. And to be honest, it's a good job for some of them, because if they did, they'd now be in a mess, But some have said, in the past, no, I can't do it because I simply can't go out and door knocking. I just can't do it. But for the ones that do, they're then sort of already in that sort of early stages of then sort of coercing other people. And right. This is just the early steps. This is way before you get baptized. So, have you got anything to say?
Yeah, it's just like one whole big program that if you're going to be a part of us, you have to toe the line. And, I can understand where they're coming from with it. And the sad part is that the Jehovah's Witnesses don't even realize that they are going step by step through a program of how to brainwash people. They have no idea they're doing this, and they think they're just doing God's work, and they're not.
What I noticed, Chad, is the way they word the headlines at each chapter.
Yeah.
Kind of coercive phrasing. It's in their grammar from the very beginning of the first Bible study at the doorstep.
Yes.
And after that, then there's a series of obligations. It's that fear, obligation, and guilt model. It takes years to get over it. It takes years to realize you probably won't die at Armageddon. If you're lucky, you'll die in your bed at an old age. But there's an increased pressure of more obligation as you go through, either if you're a born-in or a convert, there's more obligation as you go. And none of those things are in the Bible to do.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's it. It's step by step. And the more steps you go down, the more it builds. And the further in you are. And the further in you go, you know, you can't. It's a job to then, once you're in halfway, you're stuck, you know, and to get out at that point is almost impossible, you know, because you're sort of hooked, and they keep you hooked, and you know, and they keep giving you, dangling a carrot in front of your nose, you know, to lead you further and further, you know. And so, you know, you'll go out, and then they'll start encouraging you to, you know, do stuff while you're out, and then perhaps they'll encourage you to sit in with them on their Bible studies as well. You know, if you're an unbaptized, but you're still having your own Bible study with them until you get baptized, of course. So they're still feeding you full of the organization's thoughts and doctrine and what have you, but they're also filling you up a second time by maybe taking you on a call with them. And also, of course, the meetings are also going along with the JW directive. Right. There is no, you know, turn. And at that point, they then start warning you also about apostates and various people outside the religion. And this is where they start telling you not to, you know, go online and not to watch certain programs about Jehovah's Witnesses. And this is where they can start to convince you that what the world is doing is actually, you know, is that they're hateful of the Jehovah's Witnesses. It is run by Satan, the world, according to them, and you know, and Satan's against their organization because it's the only true organization on earth, according to them, that belongs to God, which we know isn't true, but people in there don't know that. You know, they're convinced that this religion now is true, and they've done a very good job so far of proving that, because a lot of these people are vulnerable when they go on the doorsteps, or they're people that are looking for something more spiritual, something bigger than themselves. This was what it was with me. I mean, I've always been a fairly spiritual person. Even as a youngster, I believed in God. That's when I first got involved with Jehovah's Witnesses. When I was 10 years old, I had a study for a year, my book of Bible stories, and we've discussed that before on Returning to Light. You know how graphic some of those pictures are in my book of Bible stories. So it doesn't just stop at adults. It also, you know, they're doing it to children as well. They're brainwashing children. And of course, children are a lot easier led than adults. And so children have got no hope, you know, of getting away from this, you know, or understanding anything else. And especially if they're born into it, you know, because, I mean, of course you trust your parents, you know, that's all you've got to, you know, you've only got your parents. So if your parents are telling you day in, day out, you know, that Jehovah does this and Jehovah's organization is wonderful, and, you know, and you need to stick with Jehovah's organization because the worldly people out there are terrible, and they point certain things out in the world. They don't point the good things out in the world. They don't point out all the churches that are going out there feeding the homeless and providing shelter and blankets for the homeless. They don't go out and show you how the churches are helping their own congregations out and stuff like that, or how the people of the world get together when there's a disaster. They don't show any of that. You know, all it is, the worldly people are bad, Jehovah's Witnesses are good, have nothing to do with them. Now, I can remember when I first come into the JWs, when I first started sort of really taking an interest was sort of 1999. And I'd had a couple of visits, and my wife had took magazines in. She wasn't particularly interested at the time, but she knew I was spiritual, and she knew I'd probably be interested in reading the magazines. So she took them in, and then I started getting interested, and I started talking to them a bit more, and then I started having a study, you know, with them, and eventually started going to the meetings, and, you know, that's the other thing as well. You know, when I went to the meeting, I put a jacket and I put a suit on. The only thing I didn't put on was a tie. And when I went into the meeting, I actually felt underdressed because everybody else had got a tie on, you know. I mean, that's just how it makes you feel, and so they get you feeling that yourself, because everybody else is all dressed up. Everybody's got a tie, and the tie's right up to the neck, nobody's, scruffy or whatever, and nobody's in jeans and t-shirt, and, it's all done, like a business, everybody's there dressed up, to the nines. And I felt a bit out of place. So the next week I put a tie on. Well, the next meeting I put a tie on as well, and I noticed when I went in there how there was all sort of in sort of clockwork motion. You got people at the front sorting out the microphones. You got people at the back who seemed to be there right on cue when you needed a microphone. You'd got people stood at the door welcoming people in. And it was just absolutely, it was just like watching it. It was all done like clockwork, and there was, and you think, well, this is really efficient, and this is how you expect things to be run, and I must admit, it did look quite impressive, and it impressed me. And then when I just before, I think it was, I don't know if it was just before I got baptized or a day or two after I got baptized, but there was a program on TV on BBC. I don't watch the BBC much these days, but in them days you could rely on the BBC a bit more. But it was called Panorama, and it was a documentary, hard-hitting sort of consumer documentary type thing, and about current affairs and various things going off in the world. And it was talking about some JW elder who had been arrested down in, I think it was Wales or somewhere like that. He'd been arrested for paedophilia, for abusing this child. And the elder got up, it was the local needs night as it happened anyway, and they got up on the local needs, and they said, look, there's going to be a panorama programme on the BBC tonight in Britain. We've been instructed to sort of say that it's best if you don't watch it because these people are apostates. Now, what it turned out, this elder had abused this child. The family had gone to the police. The police had come in, arrested the elder. They got him on DNA evidence. It wasn't just the child say so. There was DNA evidence where there shouldn't be any DNA, and so it was quite obvious that he'd raped her and stuff. There was absolutely no doubt in the jury's mind, and he got 5 years prison. Now, we was told not to watch it because it was Jehovah's enemies. These people were apostates and wanted to bring Jehovah's organization down. And and that the TV companies and stuff are all run by Satan. So basically, Satan, through the media, was basically trying to damage the JW reputation. Now, these days, I'm kicking myself because I did watch it, to be honest. I did see it, but I was almost convinced that the elder was right because, that these people probably were just, apostates. Now, how I could think that, I do not know, because I never would have thought that usually, but that's how far they'd got me, convinced that the media was definitely run by Satan, and these people had left and they just wanted to cause trouble in the congregation, and that the Satan had got into them, and they was bringing reproach upon Jehovah's organization, and and I can't believe that I even considered that to be true, but yet I did. And of course, then years later, I find out that my own daughter has been sexually molested by an elder, and had I took any notice then, maybe I would have left then, and well, I think I probably would have done if I'd have been myself, but I wasn't, because I was already in. I was hook, line, and sinker. It was either a day or two before I got baptized or a day or two after. I can't remember exactly when it was. I think it was a day or two after. But so by then I was well and true. I was well and truly into it, and I just thought, well, this is just, it doesn't. People say, well, how can an intelligent person believe what they said? Well, when you're amongst it, and when that's all you know, and they put up a very good sort of argument sometimes, they put up a very good sort of way of saying things and putting things across to make you believe that indeed, this is a one-off. This hasn't really happened, or if it has, it's just one person or whatever. It's nothing to do with Jehovah's organization. But the elders had disfellowshipped this family because they brought the police to the Kingdom Hall, and that was the long and the short of it, and of course, now I've looked back and I think, well, of course he abused that child because there was DNA evidence. I mean, it's obvious, but why I couldn't see it at the time, I really don't know. And that's how it gets you,
Well, I can tell you why you didn't buy it at the time, and that's because they already had sunk their teeth into you. They already had the momentum and the inertia, and you were already starting to be on their side, and you've already been impressed by them, and the brainwashing had already began. So really, it's not that, you shouldn't kick yourself for not seeing it sooner, because you were already being groomed and brainwashed to think a certain way. So you had no help, you had no choice in it. They had already began that whole process with you.
Yeah.
Information control. You had no idea how the law really worked. They don't want their people to know how the law works. They tell them not even to go to the library. They tell them not to watch a network show if there's an expose. That they do that around the world, Roland.
Oh yeah, I know they do. I know. It just sometimes I just think to myself, I just think, well, it's easy now because I'm out of it, and I can see it from a completely different perspective again. I can see it from a normal sort of perspective that anybody else would see it from. But at the time, I was absolutely, convinced that what they were saying was completely true. And I wouldn't consider myself, I'm certainly not Einstein, but at the same time, I'm not an idiot either. And and normally I'd say I'm reasonably streetwise as well, and quite, but they totally have me, completely fooled, and it's so this is what they do. They mess with your mind, and and they sort of, like you say, they stop you watching certain shows, or they'll stop you reading certain other material other than the JW material. So all you've got to go on is what they're telling you. And of course, it's a bit like if you're in a communist country like North Korea. All the North Koreans know, or the majority of them, is what the leadership tells them, and they're not allowed to have an opinion of any other kind. And this is exactly how JWs work. It's a form of religious communism. It's they are completely in control of every step of your life, right from the minute they come to your door, right from the minute you're born, if you're born into it. But from the minute you become interested in it as a JW, you are then a potential catch for them. And once they have caught you on the line and they've reeled you in and they've got you in the Kingdom Hall, they're not letting you go. You're in a tank then, and you've only got so much room to swim around, and they won't let you have any more. It's all down to their control after that, and not a day of your life goes by where you aren't a Jehovah's Witness. You see, it's not like a case of going to church on a Sunday, or if you go to a church, you may go to a Bible study on a Thursday night, as I do with my new church, and you may go to a Sunday service, and you have a good time while you're there, and you mix in and you do your worship, and you have that association, which is lovely. But then you're not coming home thinking about, things. You're not coming home thinking about the JW org or that religion. You're just coming home. You feel upbuilt because you've had the service, and then you just
Right.
get on with the rest of your day or night. And the thing is, that's not to say that you leave God out of your life or anything like that. If you like me, religious Christian, that's not to say that God isn't in my life every day, but not in the same. It's not ruling my life in the same way that the Jehovah's Witnesses are ruling my life. And whatever God does to rule my life is fine, because he doesn't put pressure on me. He takes the yoke off me. Now, with them, it's a different matter, because they put more and more weight on. And before you know it, you become crushed, because they want you to do so much. You see, you can't just go home and start watching TV, because you sit and watch TV and maybe a soap opera will come on, so a drama or a documentary or something like that. And maybe there's something in it that the JWs wouldn't approve of, and so you get sort of to meetings and they're saying, oh, you shouldn't be watching soap operas or whatever. You shouldn't be watching this, that, and the other on the TV. You shouldn't be listening to negative things. Certain kinds of music, there's certain kinds of music they find inappropriate. You can't go to birthday parties, you can't go to Christmas parties, and staff parties, things like that. So it's not just a case of what you do there, it's when you're home. And when you're home, even when I was doing secular work, when I wasn't doing ministry and things like that, I'm still thinking in the back of my mind about maybe a talk that I've got to do the next night, or a night or two down the line, or maybe the week after, that I've got to do at the Kingdom Hall or somewhere, maybe at an assembly. Or you're thinking, oh, tomorrow I've got to lead the field service meeting, because they'd asked you to lead the field service meeting if you're a brother. So tomorrow I've got to go on field service, and I've got to be there because nobody else is going to turn up to do it. So it's going to have to be me. And if I don't turn up to do it, then probably a load of sisters are going to be sat there and no brother to direct them. You've then got the field service maps and stuff like that, where you're going to go, and you've got to organise that. So you've got to organise something to talk about, organise the service maps for where you're going to go and preach, and door knock, etc. You may have to sort the carts out, where people are going on the carts. And so you've got all that on your mind. So you can't just come home and relax, so you've got all that going. But anyway, getting back to the steps, so you get to baptism, and of course, you have to go through a book then, which has got loads and loads of questions. And you sort of have to go through with whoever it is that's studying the Bible with you, sort of thing. It's been your book study. And you go through that, and they'll, ask you loads of different questions about Jehovah's organization, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what you think about certain issues. Do you agree with the governing body or not? And you've got to go through all that, and you've got to answer clearly. You've got to know a few scriptures, not too many though, because they don't want you knowing too much about the scripture, but they want you to know the scriptures that they want you to know. Such as, I don't know, what is it, Leviticus and Acts and wherever 15 is Acts 15, where it talks about the blood issue, that type of thing, So, and then, of course, they, you go through all that, and then, of course, it's announced that you're going for your baptism. And then, of course, you go to an assembly or whatever and get baptized. And then from there on, you truly are well and truly in. Once you've stepped into that water, that is it. That's when your life really changes.
Yeah, that's when they've branded your soul. And, it's funny. I was talking with my friend Jeff. He's a pastor up in Michigan. Here in the States. And it was interesting when we were talking just 2 days ago. We talked yesterday as well, but we were talking 2 days ago, and I pointed out how me and him had disagreed on something, and I started laughing, And he said, well, what's so funny? And I said, I have this ministry with Jehovah's Witnesses. He said, yeah. I said, do you realize they are not allowed to disagree with anything? Whenever there is a disagreement, they have to check with the governing body to see what the right thing they're to think is. And he had no idea that the control went so deep in the Watchtower.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it really does. Sorry, carry on.
It used to be that we would have, cake and coffee and have meetings with each other about what the Bible was saying.
Yep.
This was the Bereans, and this continued with the witnesses into the 70s. But after those brothers at Bethel and sisters, they would have these meetings in their room. And some of them up in Bethel, it was in the New York Times, they determined that the Bible said that they could have a sip. And when they decided that the Bible was saying something different than the governing body, they were pushed out of Bethel. And after that, they had a policy not to speculate. I remember going roller skating with some people my age, and they said, well, don't speculate on anything. And we were talking, well, what will paradise be like? And the elder says, don't speculate. So they started in the last 2-3 decades telling people to not think for themselves, to not have their own dreams about the dogma, and to not argue, disagree, or even debate their own beliefs amongst each other. It's become more controlling as time has gone on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've actually seen notices, and we've had certain talks in the past years about people getting together in their own little groups and having, even if it's Watchtower literature they're discussing, they're not supposed to do it without, somebody there like an elder or whatever, because that's dangerous, because they could suddenly start, thinking, well, hang on a minute, it says this here, but I'm not too sure about that. And then that'll put doubt into another person. If there's not an elder there to shut them up, or somebody in authority at least, to shut them up and say, look, hang on a minute, you don't say that, or you don't question that, or whatever, you see, it becomes dangerous. So they're twisting your arm. They're saying, look, you can't even have your own friends to discuss whatever it is you want to discuss. If you're going to discuss something about religion, particularly the Watchtower, then you do it in a controlled group, one that we say that you go to. Now, they used to have years ago a book study group on a Bible study group we had ours on a Tuesday night. Then we had a meeting on a Thursday night, and then we had another meeting on a Sunday, either morning or afternoon, depending on where we were. But then they stopped the book studies on a Tuesday night, Bible studies, and we used to be broke up into different groups, and each elder would be assigned a group, and they would be the elder in charge of that group, and they would open up a Bible study or book study, whatever, and we would discussing different books. Sometimes we did the Daniel book, we did the Revelation book, and various other ones, throughout the years. The Revelation book was an absolute, it was just absolutely mad, but, it was absolutely crazy book. It just, but there was a lot of things in that I really didn't understand, and still don't. I couldn't explain it now, and I couldn't explain it then, but if I was to question an elder about it, it would be, oh, well, go and study it up, or don't think about that. It's in God's hands, or we'll see when we get to the new system, or whatever. It was always sort of well, don't question it. Just accept it. Put it to the back of your mind for now. You just stick that over there for now. It doesn't matter. Well, sometimes these things do matter, and if you get these inklings, that's when you need to act on them, because if you think there's something wrong, there probably is, and there was, and a lot of why what they said in the Revelation book didn't make any sense to me whatsoever, was because it doesn't make any sense. And especially when you know the Bible, when you've come out of there, and you learn the Bible properly, then you can see how much nonsense there is. But you're not allowed to ask questions. You're not allowed to state, oh, well, hang on a minute, I don't see that this is right. Because that, you're not questioning them, you're questioning God then, according to them. You're not questioning the governing bodies, input into this. You're questioning Jehovah, because they're Jehovah's, loyal servants and, the anointed. And so therefore, to question them is to question God. So that's another way that they twist your arm, because whatever you do, it's not about them, it's about God. You leave the organization, you're not leaving them, you're leaving God, according to them. So if you're an apostate of that religion, and we know what apostate means, we know that it's just changing of sides, changing of religion. It could be a political thing. You could change, like in our Houses of Parliament, we have Labour and Conservative and Liberal, main three parties, and Scottish National Party. So you could walk across the floor to the Labour Party from a Conservative Party, and you'd be an apostate of the Conservative Party. Right. That's all that means. I mean, it's just changing sides. It's just changing for a different thing. So, I left, I become a born again Christian, but so I didn't leave God. In fact, I've got closer to him now than I ever was as a Jehovah's Witness. But, but that's what they'll portray. And they'll say that you're dangerous, that you're possessed by Satan, and that you've left God and you're an enemy of God. And you're not an enemy of God. You're not even an enemy of the people in the Kingdom Hall. All you're doing is changing your mind. Yeah. And for that, that's when it gets really nasty, because if you happen to have family in there, that family then is pressured into not talking to you. They shun you, and they will, and you are basically spiritually dead and physically dead in almost, you can be walking about, but to them, you might as well be a ghost. You know what I mean? It's like they won't see you. You could walk right up to your mother and they just wouldn't see you. Hello?
Don't want
Go ahead, fix it.
The inheritance. They want to take inheritances for them.
Yeah.
They try to extort money from families.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And that's the other thing, you see. Then they start twisting your arm for the money. You've got the step by step there. They sort of talk about the cheerful giver and the widow that gave the last 2 coins, and they make you feel so uncomfortable if you don't sort of contribute to something, and so that's the other thing. They not only do they control your life, but they control your finances as well, because they're wanting all the money off you. You're then paying to go to the meetings as well. You're paying for petrol and whatever, if you live in a fair way away, which a lot of JWs do. Some live 10, 15 mile away even from the nearest Kingdom Hall. Well, you travel 10 or 15 mile there and 10 or 15 mile back, that's 20, 30 mile. That's quite a lot of money today in petrol, and families just can't afford it. And yet, if they didn't, they would feel like, oh, well, you're not, you're not giving your all. You're not, you should be putting money aside for this and for your petrol and for your donation. And, it's all about what you can do for them. And it's all about coercion into getting the money that they want you to part with. And that's what it boils down to. The JW org is just a business. It's not a religion as such. It's just a business. It's all ways of trying to squeeze you for every penny that you've got. And not only do they squeeze you financially because they take your money in donations and the money that you put into petrol, the money that you put into going to hotels and stuff when you go into assemblies. If you're going quite a long way away, a lot of people will stay over. So you've got hotels that you've then got to purchase, and then they've got massive loads of boxes around the assembly hall where they're wanting even more money. And then of course you've got your time that you're putting into the ministry. Well, all that time that you're putting into the ministry, maybe you could be working in a secular job, earning money for your family. But no, because God will take care of that, and God will never leave you as sort of broke and stuff like that. If you give your time to the JW org, the glorious JW org, you spend your time on the ministry and you'll be looked after. And if not, even if you are going through hard times, then, you've got the new system to look forward to. And this time is just a blip. So then you're up against time. They're twisting your arm because you're up against time, because Armageddon's only just round the corner. It's tomorrow, it's the next day, So they're dangling that carrot with that as well. I must do this because otherwise I'm not going to survive. I'm not going to get through to the new system. My family's not going to survive, which was more important for me. I mean, I thought I'd already lost my salvation because of the blood issue with my wife, but I thought, well, my daughters haven't, and so I kept going for them, and of course in doing so I was doing what everybody else was doing, and I was doing it to them. I was doing it to my own daughters. I was sort of coercing them into thinking that this was such a good religion, and coercing them into doing everything that was expected of them, and to a certain extent, I mean, certainly my youngest daughter did for quite a long time until she finally left. My youngest daughter left earlier, but even then, they're trying to coerce. Like when my oldest daughter wasn't going, they was then taking me out the back and saying, look, we noticed Michaela isn't coming to the meetings, and then they'll start reading scriptures about a man having control of his own family and being godly, and so then they're making me feel bad because Michaela's not coming. Now, I was of the opinion that everybody has to find God for themselves, and it doesn't matter how much pressure or twisting that anybody does. If you can twist anybody and twist their arms, but if they're not wanting to serve God, or if they're not wanting to go to a meeting, or they don't particularly agree with that particular religion, then no amount of twisting or whatever is going to make them love God. But they don't say it like that. You see, they basically, it's all down to you. You're a bad parent if you don't bring your daughters or your sons or whatever, or if they're a bit out of control, they get into a bit of trouble. That's your fault. And so they're twisting you like that. So they've twisted your situation, they've brainwashed you, and then you're brainwashing your own family. And if you don't do that, and if then that's when things start to happen, and then they start causing you issues.
Yeah.
Roland, did you get the story from Japan, where the courts in Japan have said that to deny a child a blood transfusion or coerce him to go to a meeting is abuse?
I had heard about that. I haven't seen it, but I had heard somebody told me about it. Yeah. Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it is. It's abuse is what it is. I mean, there's no other word for it. To force somebody, to coerce somebody, and say, well, if you leave us, you're not going to get to see your family again. Your family's not going to talk to you. Your friends that you've made here in however many years you've been there, they're not going to talk to you. You've had no education because we put a stop to that. So you're not going to get a job. You're not so likely to get a decent job if you leave here. You may be working for a Jehovah's Witness if you happen to be young, particularly as well. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses do work together. And so you lose your job, you lose your family, you lose your friends. And then, of course, you've lost your daily routine of being a JW. You've lost that routine that you've had for many years, and you can feel lost. And it takes a lot of overcoming, and there's an awful lot of trauma when you leave, because they've had so much influence on your life. I mean, even like I've mentioned before that I treated my children occasionally. We didn't have birthdays, we didn't have Christmas and stuff like that, but I would treat them occasionally if they'd done well at school. And as I said, I'd got one of them a limousine, and that was wrong. I had two elders come round here having a go at me about that. Well, in the end, I told them to get out because by that point I'd had enough. But I said, what I do with my children is my business. You know what I mean? If I want to give them a treat, I'll give them a treat. They don't have Christmas, they don't have birthdays, they haven't got the mother, the brother because they've died. I said, what are they supposed to have? What, weeks in, weeks out of just constantly going to meetings every week and nothing else? Constantly just going to school and back. And then, so they get home and we're getting ready for a meeting on a Thursday night. And then they have to go there. We get home late and then they get them to bed. And then they're getting up early the next morning for school and they're absolutely shattered. I mean, where's the fun in it? They're not allowed to go to the park and play with other kids. They've got complete control over your whole life. And then when you leave, you dare to leave. If you've been there since a kid and you dare to leave, that's what you get. So that's where the threat comes in. That's where the real arm twisting comes in.
Right.
The real threatening is you leave us and you lose your family. And that, for me, that really is the definition of a cult. If you think of cult, you think of that sort of thing, being taken from your family, being shunned by your family if they're in it. If you're in it and your family are not Jehovah's Witnesses, even then you're sort of told to steer away from them. I mean, yeah, all right, you'll get together for perhaps the odd occasion, but for the most part, if you're a Jehovah's Witness and your family aren't, you tend to not lose contact with them as such, but you tend to have less and less to do with them because you tend to spend more time with the people who are of like mind, religiously, So then you start spending time with these people, they become your friends and your family. So then when you leave, you're almost estranged from your own family anyway. It takes time to get back to having a sort of a normal relationship with them as well. So, I mean, they just put so much pressure on. You go to work and a colleague asks you to stay over and have a drink or whatever, stay and have a drink or come back to theirs for a party or something. No, you can't do any of that, because they're a worldly person and worldly people are evil, and they're possessed by Satan and they may lead you into debauchery, and you may end up, if it happens to be a female, you may not be able to control yourself and end up sleeping with them. I mean, they just treat you like you have got no self-control whatsoever. They treat you like you can't be trusted, in the same room as anybody else. And if they're not watching you 24/7 and telling you basically what to do, then you will fall into that way of life.
And what's interesting about that, Roland, is it's so ironic that they are very, very big on insisting everybody has a completely free will, and that is a gift from God. God has given us a completely free will, but then they're so big on wanting to control our wills.
Yeah.
I mean, they need to make up their mind. Did God give us a free will or didn't he? And
precisely.
If he didn't give us a free will, then we do need to be controlled. But if he did give us a free will, then we have to make our own choices. And if we're going to make our own choices, that means we shouldn't be coerced into doing things. We shouldn't be controlled. We shouldn't be forced. We shouldn't be intimidated. We shouldn't be threatened. We shouldn't be fearful to disagree.
No, absolutely. The thing is,
the beauty of the free will.
Yeah, the thing is, if the Holy Spirit, if you are religious and the Holy Spirit moves you, you'll go to wherever it is. Look at Aylesbury, the Aylesbury revival. Right. People have gone there. Nobody's forced them. Nobody's knocked on the door. Nobody's enticed them with promises of paradise or anything like that, or a promises of a brilliant religion that nobody else can touch, you know, in regards of their own. You know, they do things that other religions just don't do. Nonsense, absolute nonsense.
Right.
You know, these people went to Aylesbury or wherever because the spirit moved them. And you know, this is what they don't understand, you know, that people, God gave us free will, but then we notice it more when we do things like that. When we are moved by the spirit, we will notice it more and we will be happier. And I think when we do come out the witness, I could say so much more about this, but we're running out of time. I can see I mean, I can't believe where this hour and quarter's gone to, but
I know.
but you know, the thing to do when we do leave, what we need to do is just completely try and, you know, if people do invite us back after we've left the JWs and we do make new friends and they invite us back for a drink or something to the, you know, a few people are getting together, just go and do it. Don't, or, you know, because some of us can still feel that JW inner thing, oh no, I don't want to be mixing with worldly people or whatever. You know, go, because you'll find that most of the time worldly people are just not that, you know, they're just like anybody else. I mean, most people are decent people, you know, the majority. You get a few bad ones like anywhere. But, you know, and whatever it is you feel that you want to do, just go and do it. If you want more education, if you've been thinking about further education, don't matter how old you are. If you want to do more education because you missed out as a JW, go and do it. Find out and don't put it off. Just go and do it, because you'll thank yourself afterwards. You really will. And don't be put off going to other churches just because the Jehovah's Witnesses have told you all sorts of weird things happen at churches. It depends on what church you go to. Yes, there are good and bad churches, just like there are anything else. Or, you know, you find the right church and you'll be happy. You know, I found the right church. There's nothing weird about it. You know, they're lovely people. We're doing everything we can to help the community. Unlike the JWs, they do absolutely nothing to help the community. They don't even help their own, you know, and yet we do. And, you know, and they help each other. You know, we have a loving relationship. You don't feel on edge. I can disagree with my pastor, and I often, well, not often do, but occasionally do. We'll agree to disagree. Yeah. You know, but he's never once threatened to kick me out of the church. You know, he's never once said to me, oh, you know, how dare you question me? You know, in fact, it's just the opposite. He likes me to question him sometimes, you know.
Right. That's the iron sharpening iron aspect.
Yeah. You know.
Another thing I would say is don't be afraid to start asking questions, because when you get involved, you know, the Watchtower tells you basically they get you in the position where you're scared to ask any questions. So I think for a lot of ex-JWs, when you first come out and you're scared and everything, and someone asks you, hey, you want to go out to dinner? Or, hey, you want to come over for a barbecue? One of the best questions I think you can ask, and you might feel weird for asking it, is, why do you want me to? And if you get in the habit of asking, why do you want me to? Then all of a sudden, when you get invited to come back to a Kingdom Hall, or someone from the Kingdom Hall reaches out to you wanting to come back, you're already used to saying, why do you want me to?
Yeah.
And then it's going to come down to, well, we want you to come back. Why do you want me to come back?
Yeah.
And it puts them on the spot, and that's something they're not ready for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's getting on for 12 now. I mean, in a couple of weeks or 4 weeks, I'm not sure. We haven't pinned her down to an actual date yet, but we've got an interview coming up with Sabrina Pattis, yeah. You know, one of our friends on the XJW site. She's been on Rick's show many years ago. Rick interviewed her, but she brought out an article, and she wrote this article, and it's about people who say just get over it, because, you know, talking about this lady whose husband, who'd never been a JW, wanted her to just come out and just get on with life and forget about the JWs. Well, Sabrina wrote an article about just this and why it's not easy, and discussing some of the things that we've discussed tonight about how controlling they are. Now, she's agreed to do an interview, and we're going to talk about that article that she wrote, and obviously will discuss her own situation when she was a JW and how it affected her and how the trauma affected her, and if
Right.
other people want to ring in. I don't know whether we're trying to pin her down to a date at the minute. I'm not sure. She's busy for the next couple of weeks, so probably about 4 weeks time we'll have her on. And if people want to call in and that when we do that and give their stories on how it's affected them, and maybe ask Sabrina anything or ask us, then that would be great. So that we're not sure either 2 weeks time or 4 weeks time, but when I've pinned her down, I think that should be a good interview. So
Absolutely.
she's very knowledgeable, and she's had a lot of experience of JWs. So
Yeah.
and also I'd say, if you just come out the JWs, there's a lot of ex-JW sites on Facebook. Don't be frightened to go on there. Don't be frightened and put off by what the witnesses say about apostates and evil people on there. I was a JW once. I'm an apostate of the JW religion. I'm not apostate of God. I am Christian. But there's a massive JW community, ex-JW community out there, and we're all there, and we're like one big family. And that the site that Sabrina is on, she helped me when I first come out the JWs. I mean, she was a massive help to me. I mean, she got me through a lot of bad times, and so did the rest of them on there. And there's a few sites I've been on, ex-JW related, all ex-JW people. And they are just the most loving people, the majority of them anyway. They are the most loving people. So if you want to get out the JWs, or if you just come out the JWs, I suggest you try sites like that. We have Help Jehovah's Witnesses. That's a site that's just specifically for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, where we can just talk about our experiences. There's no JW, active JWs on there. We do have a site which is JW and Biblical Discussion, which is active JWs on there. But our hope is that we get through to some of them, and the fact that they're even on there talking to us, they're going against the governing body by doing that. So we hope to get through to some of them as well. And so you can come onto them sites as well and join in if you want to, or just watch the comments and just basically see why they're wrong, and just see how they run when they're questioned, and just see for yourself, what it's all about. And you'll get a great response. You'll get, and you'll get the love and respect that you need and that you haven't had at the JW org. So anyway, we're about 5 past. Is there anything else you want to add, Chad?
Yeah, I just want to remind people, we also have our own Facebook group, the Returning to Light Facebook group. So, I mean, if you guys want to get a hold of me or Roland, go ahead, join the group. Come on in. The water is fine. We'd love to have you guys.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to, if anybody's got anything they wish to talk about, any experiences, anything they just want to get off the chest, next time we're on, let me know, and we can, if you want to come on for an interview, or if you just want to come on and have a chat, then by all means do so. Is there somebody there?
Go ahead and speak up. Roland, we had a number of people in. I think we can give a few more minutes to the program. I do believe some people wanted to speak up. So go ahead and hit *6 if you'd like to say hello to Roland and Chad. You're on with us. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, we'd love to have callers.
*6. There was a few people in there. They might have disappeared on us. They were listening in, and I'm not sure what happened, but they did want to speak up. But anyways, let me just check it over here. I'm just going to check my phone system. And if anyone would like to say hello before we leave the Returning to Light program, go ahead. You're on with us. Speak up if you want to. If not, we're going to close the program down and start our news.
Yeah. Hello.
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 Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear of your experience, Roland, and the other. I forget the other hosts there too, and so forth. I'm always saddened by when I hear these stories on there that of ex-JWs, and we need to remember though that the vast majority, not to go on a guilt trip, because here at Six Screens we don't want anybody to feel that go on a guilt trip for any reason. We have to remember the vast majority of people don't know what is going on. They haven't been told anything, and so they are misled.
Right.
And I mean, the vast majority of people don't know how to do research on a religious society. Now, I myself was an ex-librarian. I know how to do research analysis and so forth, and that includes religions. And so my heart goes out to all the ex-witnesses and so forth. And I continue to encourage people to get out from the Watchtower Society. Incidentally, if I didn't introduce myself, I'm Ken from Michigan here. And everybody, you take care then, and we'll see you next time around, and I'll see you at news time.
Yeah.
Alrighty,
Okay.
Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Could I ask a question, Roland?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
It's a little off topic, but I'm curious as to the response in the UK about Anthony Morris being removed from the governing body. Have you had any feedback?
Not a lot. I've spoken to I spoke to one witness because she's been contacting me about the elder that abused my daughter, has abused her granddaughter apparently, and she's still an active JW. And I asked her about Anthony Morris and Tony Morris, and she just said that she thought he'd stepped down for health reasons. And when I first told her, she didn't know, but then when I spoke to her again, she said, well, I think he's just stepped down for health reasons, and that's all they know. And also my friends, I think my friend's next door neighbour said something similar about him stepping down for health reasons. So that's all that they've been told, and that's all they know. So
Okay.
as far as I know, Sue, yeah. So as far as I know, so that's all. That's I don't think any of them particularly know any more than we do, really, and I think they probably know less.
Yeah.
There's somebody else there. Anybody else with a question before we close? Hello.
Hello.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, Roland. This is Fran and Joe. Sorry, we just got on. We didn't get a chance to listen to the program, but we wanted to say hi to Roland.
Oh, hi. It's nice to have you along. How are you doing?
Good. I know we spoke before. It's been a while, but you're doing okay?
Yeah, we're all doing good. Yeah. It's it's life gets better. Yeah, my youngest daughter just had me first grandson. I've got two granddaughters, but I had a grandson. He was born last weekend, so yeah, life's pretty good, and I'm pleased I'm out the JWs and that they don't have to be part of that. I'm just relieved that my grandchildren won't have that, that burden around the neck like I and my children did for a while.
Yes, yeah. We're just, I don't know if you know Gary Alt. He's from the UK. He's not from the UK. He's from the US, but we're going to be interviewing him tonight at 9:30, and he lives in the UK.
All right, yeah. I don't know. I don't think I know him. No, but I mean, I may have come across him at some point, but the name doesn't ring a bell at the minute. So, but that sounds interesting. Anyway, I'll look forward to listening to that.
Okay, good to hear you, Roland.
Yeah, and you. Yeah, what are you going to be interviewing him about? Has she gone?
I'm right here.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, what are you going to be interviewing him about then on your show? What is the interview? What's he talking about?
Okay, we're called The Outside Story, and he's going to be talking about, his experience. He was an elder, and, when he got out and what he's doing now. He's writing a book. He's been a life coach. He's had a lot of experiences. So he's basically going to be talking about his story outside of the Watchtower.
All right. Okay. Well, that sounds like it's going to be worth a listen. So I look forward to listening to that later. So,
Yeah.
okay. Anybody else?
Oh, yeah, I had a point.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is to go along with Susan. She was talking about Anthony Morris and what was being heard around your neck of the woods. If I may, I live in Nashville. This is Eric, by the way. And Roland, in Nashville, I went to, I crash carts, and I'm a regular. They know me now. And I put up the stickers. They don't know that I do that, but they have a feeling that I put up the anti-Jehovah's Witness stickers up where they do their cart work. And I asked them, I wasn't aggressive. I just kind of talked to them and let them talk to me. And the only question that I asked them was, what happened with Anthony Morris? And they're like, yeah, we saw the announcement, and we're all thinking that it's probably his health. And that's getting passed around, and we all smell a skunk, a rat. You know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot more to it than just his health. I mean, you know what I mean? That is, if it had been just his health, they wouldn't have said what they said. They'd have made more of it. They'd have said, oh, you know, Tony Morris, he's served for X amount of years. He's been wonderful. He's done this, that, and the other. There's no way they'd have just made that announcement of him just stepping down like that if it had been just purely ill health. They'd have thanked him for everything that he'd done. You know, they'd have made a big thing about it, how he'd been wonderful and what he'd done throughout the years. And, you know, there'd have been a big write-up about it. But none of that. So, no, there's definitely a rat there. Yeah. And it's not just Tony Morris himself. So, but, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Yeah.
I mean, I was trolling her to see what her feelings were, you know, about what the consensus is.
Yeah.
At an aggressive approach that I usually do.
All right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's good to know. Well, thanks for coming in with that, because that sort of says what basically confirms what I say, that they just don't know. They just been told that it's health grounds and that's it, and they believe that, and they're not going to believe anything else. It doesn't matter what we say until something further comes out along the pipeline, which it will. I'm sure. I don't think Tony Morris is just going to vanish like smoke, like we, you know, because I think something else is further down the pipeline. There's something there. And I don't think it's anything to do with health myself, or not just health. You know, I think he's going to become a scapegoat for them, to be honest, somewhere down the line, maybe a paedophile case going on or something, or the amount of paedophile cases. I don't know. I can't really guess, but there's something. It just in my gut feeling, there is something that he's going to be made a scapegoat for, because that's what the Watchtower do. You don't matter how loyal you've been or not loyal. You know, if they need a fall guy and you happen to fit that profile, then that's what they'll do. So nobody's safe as a Jehovah's Witness. Nobody. You know, you can think you're top of the, you know, mill, and you could be one of the governing body, but if the other governing bodies members, you know, gang up on you, same in the Kingdom Halls, if the JW elders gang up on you and your face doesn't fit, or they want to use you as a scapegoat, then that's what they'll do. That's exactly what you do. There is no loyalty within the Watchtower, no loyalty whatsoever. You can't trust your friends, you can't trust your family, and you certainly can't trust the elders and the governing body.
Right. Yeah.
So, anybody else? Pushing for time here now, 1:15. I think we've got time for one quick one.
Go ahead. You're on with us. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Roland, I'll bet you anything that when he got checked out, so to speak, that they offered him a severance package predicated on a certain amount of money each year if he keeps his mouth shut.
Do you think so? Yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
I had another. I got a phone call from someone that I think of as an insider, and he came up with the idea that this is an allegation that he got drunk at a family party. He was taking his clothes off, and this situation happened more than once. That is the rumor that I heard.
Right.
Rumor.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff floating around out there. I mean, some of it's going to be true. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe Stephen Lett or somebody doesn't go next. He's a bit of a liability, especially after his, children are enemies of God. I think he'll be next. And I think for myself, this is why they brought the other two governing body members in, because they knew very well that this is what they were going to do. They was going to get rid of Tony Morris and probably Stephen Lett next. If I'd be very surprised if he doesn't go within the next year or two. And I think this was all planned before Tony Morris stepped down. This is why they brought the other two governing body members in. So,
yep,
yeah. How are we doing for time, Rick?
Well, I guess you were right about there, Roland. So you want
right? Okay, we'll wrap it up there then. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Thanks everybody for tuning in. It was a great time having you. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I'm Chad Burns, co-host. Roland Smith is your primary host. This has been Returning the Light, and we'll see you in a couple weeks, folks.
Yes, we will. Take care. God bless you all. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Roland. Thank you very much, Chad. Great program. Lots of people coming in and listening to the program tonight. So that's really good, Roland and Chad. You're doing a good job. Keep up the good work. Well, anyways, we are going to be going to our program, JW World News. That's coming up next. You don't want to miss it, friends. We're going to have a great discussion tonight. A lot of things we're going to be discussing. So stay with us. Don't go anywhere. And we have a number of programs coming up here on the 6 screens tonight. After the news tonight at 9:30, you just heard Fran and Joe. They have a program. It's called The Outside Story, and they're going to be interviewing Gary Alt. Now, you see him all over Facebook. He writes a lot on there. He's somewhat a prolific writer on Facebook and poster. He puts a lot of posts up there. So he's coming on. He's from America, but he's living in the UK. So he'll be coming in tonight from United Kingdom. And then around, I'd say about 11 o'clock tonight, we got a brand new program coming up here tonight. Well, the man's name is Eric. You've heard him on here. He's out of Tennessee, originally from Rhode Island. But Eric has a lot of bones to pick with the Watchtower. He's got a great name for his program, Red Pilled from the Watchtower. Of course, that's from the movie Matrix, right? So the Watchtower gives the red pill, and he'll be talking about that tonight. And I have to tell you something. He's going to talk tonight on how he was hurt so badly by the Watchtower. Him and his wonderful wife were hurt so bad they had to move from New England to Tennessee just to get away from these people. And they made life so miserable for Eric and his wife that they actually had to quit work and go on disability. That's how bad it got. He's going to talk about that tonight right here on the 6 Screens Network. And then if you're pacing the floor tonight and you don't know what to do, you can't sleep, I'll tell you what, apostate babe, Linda James. Well, she's your favorite apostate. She'll be in tonight around 12:30 tonight. So by all means, listening to Linda tonight right here on the 6 Screens Telenetwork. We're now going to be going over to JW World News. We're ending this broadcast, but stay with us.